Welcome to the RC Modeller Conversations, an occasional series on RC modelers and their aircraft. My name is Neil Muller. Today I'm with Jeremy Turner to talk about his 3D printed aircraft. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hello.
Looking around your workshop, many of your planes are 3D printed or home constructed out of less common materials such as core flute. What made you go down this route?
So I chose, after the experiences with my foam planes, which are very enjoyable, and then realising that I really enjoy this hobby, I thought, well, how can I do this where I can actually do things myself? Internet, I stumbled across the flight test guys and their foam board planes. In theory, an economical way to do it, and I love building things myself. But yeah, so I started with the foam board planes from the flight test guys. I made 3 or 4 of their designs, and they flew quite well. There was a couple that I really liked. The Bloody Wonder, their foam board design was a fantastic plane to fly, just not super durable, not very water resistant. Still watching lots of flight videos and came across people making things out of corrugated plastic. So I tried that, and that's an amazing material for a lot of reasons. It's cheap, waterproof, incredibly durable, a little bit heavy, and very easy to work with. So I've made a few planes out of that. And then from that, the home building sort of ethic, I guess, then I came across 3D printing, and deciding to get a 3D printer was one thing. Now, what I did decide on was the Creality Ender 3, and that's because it's a very, very popular printer, very easy to modify, very reasonably priced, and there's a lot of user support.
What's involved in 3D printing a model aircraft?
But generally most people are buying files that have been designed and prepared for printing by other companies. Download them, the cost is fairly nominal. So once you have your files on the computer, you then run it through a program called a slicing program, and it slices our file into lots and lots of layers that the printer can print. So you then have your sliced file, which you then just send to your printer, and then you just wait to come off and then start the assembly. Yeah, now that's a really interesting question. But there's sort of two main things that it has to be a nice flyer. And one way you can figure that out is with lots of YouTube videos now. You can watch other people fly. The other one, the main thing is that ease of printing. I've had a couple of planes actually that are really good flyers, but they were very, very difficult to print. I managed to get them printed, but it was a really difficult process. So the main thing is ease of printing. And then the next thing then is ease of assembly. Some of them are much more easy to assemble than others. Because you're using super glue a lot for your assembly, you don't have a lot of time to get your parts together, and there's no real room to move things around for alignment. And the way people are designing them now, some of them are a bit more click together and keep their alignment much more easily. So when you're committing to your super glue bonding, you can be fairly confident you're going to have your wings and fuselage aligned.
How resilient a 3D printed aircraft?
And that's a good question. And you can see by my big smile that the answer is not very. The typical materials you would use to print planes at the moment, and that will change, are fairly brittle. So they don't like heavy landings at all. So I can tell you the upside of that is it makes you focus on your landings and get them right. Once they're in the air, they're pretty good, but there's a few aspects around resilience in the air. If your print is suboptimal, you might discover in the air that you've got some weaknesses that you didn't realise were there. That's happened to me once, where a motor came off from its motor mount. So there's a long way to go in terms of the resilience, and I think a lot of that will come from new materials appearing. There's already things like carbon fibre filaments and things which apparently are much stronger. And I think we're going to see a lot of improvements in resilience in the next decade.
Here we have your Savage Bobber model, which has a wingspan of about 1400 millimetres, but it's showing some crash damage. What happened?
So after the first flight, which went very well, the second flight I had a servo failure, which resulted in the plane coming from about 50 metres up in a nose down spiral straight into the ground. So we had 3 main areas of damage. One was a split all along the wing here, which has now been repaired. Some damage to the fuselage struts, which have also all been repaired. And the main area of damage was to the nose section, which sits in front of this bit here, which we can now reprint.
Okay, so now let's watch the nose being reprinted. Do you think a 3D printed model is suitable for a beginner in RC?
Generally, the short answer would be no. They're a little bit fragile. I would suggest a nice robust foam sort of plane as your first plane.
3.5 hours later, here's the finished cowl. Now it's just a matter of fitting it to the Savage Bobber model. So what now has to be done to fit the cowl onto the model?
There's very little to do. It's just a matter of removing the printed brim. So this thing here is called the brim, which just aids with bed adhesion. And it's just a matter of peeling it off by hand or with a knife, and then tidying it up with some sandpaper if you need to, which I'll do in a short while. And then all you need to do is, which I've also printed, is some little alignment tabs, which then fit into the cowling. There's slots, printed slots in the cowling, so I'm slotting one of those in now. 5 of those printed tabs then just align with the receiving slots in the fuselage. There, those points there. So then it's a matter of just slotting in the cowling to the fuselage, and then I can then get metal screws and screw them in through each of these tabs and through the reinforced plastic, and that's the cowling attached.
How's the motor fitted into the cowl?
You have to print 4 little pylon type bits of plastic and another type of plastic called PETG, and then each of those individual 4 pieces of plastic screw onto the cross mount of the motor, and then you can just pop your motor in with those pylon mounts into these slots here, and then you actually glue those to the cowling, which allows the motor to be removed. But if you...
Now the finished cowling is installed into the Savage Bobber fuselage, complete with dummy cylinder heads. It's ready for its remaiden flight. If someone wants to build 3D printed planes for the first time, what advice would you give them?
So what I would do first is try and find someone who's printing aeroplanes already, maybe in your club if you're a member of a club, or just someone you know who has experience with printing planes, and then just go and talk to them. They will have a wealth of knowledge about how to get the process started and how to overcome some of the difficulties of printing a robust and nice looking plane. Alternatively, you can also just talk to someone who has experience with printers, even if they're not printing aeroplanes. Most of the principles apply printing other things that will apply to aeroplanes as well. If you don't know anyone who's printing planes personally, just go onto the internet. There is basically countless videos and forums where you'll get loads of really good, helpful advice on printing your own aeroplanes.
Well, Jeremy, thanks very much for giving up the time to talk with me and for printing the parts for the plane so that we can see how it all works. Okay, this is take 2.
Do you want me to open them up a bit?
Right.